Hello, and welcome back to Boring History for Sleep. Tonight, we are traveling far to the east, into the world of feudal Japan. While many people imagine samurai, cherry blossoms, and elegant tea ceremonies, life for most people was far from peaceful or comfortable. For the ordinary townspeople and peasants, survival was a daily challenge, and winters, famines, and wars made life even harsher. Let's take a slow journey into this past and quietly explore why surviving in feudal Japan was far from easy. Feudal Japan lasted for centuries, from the 12th century to the 19th century, and it was governed by a strict social hierarchy. At the top were the shoguns, military rulers who held real power. Below them were powerful daimyo, regional lords who controlled vast areas of land. Samurai served the daimyo, bound by the code of Bushido, living disciplined and often dangerous lives. The vast majority of people, however, were peasants, artisans, and merchants. For peasants in particular, survival depended entirely on the land, the seasons, and the whims of nature. Most peasants lived in small villages, usually clustered near rice fields or other farmland. Houses were simple wooden structures with thatched roofs. Floors were made of packed earth or wooden planks, and paper sliding doors separated rooms. Heat was minimal. Most warmth came from small hearths used for cooking, but they could barely heat the home. Winters in northern Japan were long and harsh, and snow could accumulate for months. Families often slept close together on thin straw mats, sharing body heat. But cold seeped in through gaps in the walls. Clothing was limited to simple layers of hemp or cotton, sometimes wrapped in straw cloaks for added warmth. Furs were rare and expensive. Even with these measures, frostbite, illness, and hypothermia were real threats during the cold months. Food was a constant concern. The Japanese diet for peasants relied heavily on rice, though barley, millet, and other grains were also important. Vegetables were seasonal, and protein came mostly from beans, fish, and occasionally small amounts of meat. Salted, dried, or pickled foods helped preserve nutrition through the winter. Food scarcity was common, especially during years of poor harvest or natural disasters. Famines were devastating. In some cases, entire villages could lose half their population to starvation. Farmers had little control over the weather, and irrigation systems could fail or floods could destroy crops. Every meal was rationed carefully, and families had to make do with whatever was available. Hygiene was another challenge. Bathing was not a daily practice, though many people visited communal baths occasionally. During winter, cold water made bathing less practical, so washing was infrequent. Houses were smoky from cooking fires, and sanitation was minimal. Human waste was often used as fertilizer for fields, but that meant that disease could spread easily. Simple injuries could become deadly if they became infected. Peasants lived with the constant awareness that even small accidents could have serious consequences. Work was relentless. Farming was labor-intensive and exhausting, especially in mountainous or marshy regions where land was hard to cultivate. Rice paddies required careful attention, from planting to irrigation to harvesting. Even in the cold months, people had to repair tools, mend clothes, and maintain homes. Children contributed from an early age, helping in the fields, gathering firewood, or tending animals. Every member of the family worked, and failure to do so could mean insufficient food or shelter. Social life was tightly controlled by the feudal hierarchy. Peasants were bound to the land controlled by a local lord, and they owed taxes and labor in exchange for protection. This protection was not always reliable. Samurai might pass through villages collecting tribute or requisitioning supplies, leaving peasants with even less to survive on. Punishments for failing obligations could be severe, ranging from fines to public humiliation, or even corporal punishment. Freedom was limited, and upward mobility was rare. Those born poor usually remained poor. Disease was a constant companion. Smallpox, influenza, dysentery, and tuberculosis were common, and medical knowledge was limited. Treatments were based on herbal remedies, acupuncture, and religious rituals, but these often did little to prevent death. Doctors were rare in villages, and the wealthy had better access to care, though even they were not immune to epidemics. Illness could strike suddenly, and a single disease outbreak could decimate a community. Violence and war were never far away. Japan during the feudal era was frequently in conflict. Regional lords often fought each other for territory, and samurai carried out these campaigns. Even for those not involved in battle, villages could be raided, crops burned, and people conscripted into armies. Women and children were vulnerable during such conflicts, and many sought shelter in forests or behind fortified temples. Peaceful times were relative and often short-lived. Daily life was filled with rituals and obligations. Festivals marked the seasons, and religion played a central role. Shinto and Buddhist practices provided some comfort, guiding behavior and giving people a sense of meaning. However, religious devotion did not ease hunger, cold, or disease. It was more a psychological support than a practical solution to survival. The natural environment added another layer of difficulty. Japan's mountainous terrain and frequent natural disasters, like typhoons, earthquakes, plagues, and floods, meant that life could change overnight. A heavy rainstorm could destroy rice paddies, a landslide could wipe out a village, earthquakes could collapse homes or kill livestock. The people adapted as best they could, building levees, terraces, and simple, retaining walls. But nature's force often exceeded their means. Even leisure was limited. Storytelling, music, and festivals provided moments of reprieve, but most entertainment was seasonal or tied to religious observance. Peasants had little time for extended play or art. Every day was a struggle to survive, and every moment of rest was precious. Winter, in particular, was merciless. Snow-blocked roads, rivers froze, and the threat of famine increased. Families conserved heat and food, huddling together in dimly lit huts. Fires were kept small to preserve wood, but smoke made breathing difficult. Some families migrated temporarily to slightly warmer areas, though travel was dangerous. Others relied on stockpiled food and community support to survive. The cold months tested endurance in ways we can hardly imagine today. For women and children, life was equally hard. Women were responsible for preparing food, tending to animals, spinning and weaving cloth, and caring for children, all while managing the household. During winter, these tasks became more difficult. Children learned to contribute early, but accidents in the cold were common, and illnesses spread quickly. Education was minimal, usually limited to skills needed for survival and household management. The samurai class, while more privileged, also faced danger. Their lives revolved around loyalty, warfare, and strict codes of behavior. Mistakes could be deadly. Honor had to be preserved at all costs, and combat was a constant possibility. Even for them, survival was never guaranteed. Looking back, it becomes clear why life in feudal Japan was a constant struggle. Hunger, cold, disease, social obligations, and the threat of violence shaped daily existence. Only the resourceful, disciplined, and sometimes lucky survived to see another season. Yet, despite these hardships, people found ways to endure. Communities supported one another. Traditions provided structure, and small comforts, warm fires, shared meals, or festivals helped sustain hope. So, as you drift into sleep tonight, consider the resilience of those who lived in feudal Japan. Their lives were far from easy, and survival required constant effort, courage, and adaptation. From the frozen rice fields to the smoky huts, from the threat of disease to the demands of a strict social hierarchy, life was hard, often unforgiving, and utterly different from our own. And yet, they persisted, season after season, generation after generation, leaving a history that we can now explore quietly from the comfort of our own warm beds. Good night.